Good morning. Welcome to West Valley Center for Spiritual Living. I am Reverend Clyde Goins, the assistant minister, and really happy to be here. And I'm really happy that you guys are all here, and also you online. We're glad that you guys are joining us online as well. And just a few quick announcements. First is probably the most exciting thing is, so if you were going on the website and signing up, we had a board meeting last week, and we're moving away from that, so you don't have to sign up on the website to attend the service. But we are still asking right now that you sign in up front. We're still asking that we're going to continue to wear a mask. We're still checking everybody's temperature, because we are moving just as slowly we moved into it, slowly we're going to move out of it. So everybody feels safe and secure right where we are, and so we're doing it very consciously as a group. So that's our intention, and same thing with the setup of the center. We're going to leave the chairs set up this way as well.
For a while.
Yeah, for a while. So, and we still come together every Sunday to remember the truth, right? That we're whole, perfect, and complete, just the way that we are. And we keep it that way. All right, so just a really quick story for you. So last night I went to the drive-in. Who's been to the drive-in? Who's been to the drive-in lately? Okay. Well, there is a drive-in, you guys, at Bethany Home and 59th Avenue. And so it was a beautiful night. It was a great movie. I had a lot of fun. But the really interesting thing that really brought my attention, I was talking to Reverend Karen about, is that if you've been to the drive-in before, do you remember the old speakers that you put in the window?
Right.
And do you remember back in the day that those were like really great speakers and we could hear the movie? Yeah. If we had that today, everybody would complain. Right? So they don't have those speakers anymore. Now you just tune into your FM radio station and you hear it through your car speaker, and so you can see it. So if you got a really good sound system in your car system, you got a really good stereo sound going on there. So, but anyway, so what made me think about is back then that speaker in that car watching those movies when I went to the drive-in, it was a great experience. And now fast forward, and now we don't have those speakers anymore. Now we have them tuned into the radio station. And how life continues to evolve. And life is always evolving, right? And always to the highest and best good. And so our life is no different. Our life is always evolving to the highest and best good. And I will also share with you, our community's life is also evolving to the highest and best good. We had the board meeting last week, and we had a lot of exciting stuff that is coming up and that we're working on as a board and to roll out, and more to come on that over the next couple of months to share with you. But just again, so how is your life evolving, right? So we're co-creating our lives together with God. So let's do it to the highest and best good that we can. All right, so if you can just simply just breathe in and just relax into this moment as we allow ourselves to center ourselves with the Bradfords and open up our hearts and minds for Reverend Karen's beautiful message. Thank you. Good morning.
will wait upon the Lord. Wait upon the Lord.
Be still, my soul, be still. Be still, my soul, be still. Be still and know. Be still, my soul, be still. Be still, my soul, be still. Be still and know.
I will make a quiet place within my life, and I will wait upon the Lord. Wait upon the Lord. I will make a quiet place.
Good morning. Take this off. Oh, just breathing that in, that this is indeed a quiet place, where the mind quiets, where all the cares of early this morning or anything from yesterday disappear, and that we tune in to what Reverend Clyde just said, that life is ever evolving, and we come here to be nourished and spiritually fed, a turning towards home to listen to the message that was cultivated all week by our beloved Reverend Karen, that these seeds may be planted and fermented and grown, and that with each seed, a revelation of truth is recognized, dawns upon us as an insight, as love and understanding and peace and beauty. And I invoke that into this space today, knowing that divine perfection is indeed who each one of us are, and that there is no mistake, that we are all perfect, we are all divine, and we are all whole. And with that truth, I say, and so it is. My reading today is from Change Your Life, Change Your World by Ahmad Majavin. And Ahmad Ma says that we are each spiritual beings of an infinite magnitude, and we have the power to choose what we think, what we feel, what we say, and what we do. We have the power to overcome our self-limiting beliefs and to make new choices that affirm our highest potential. We have the power to be all that we dream of and to live to our highest potential. We are certainly not victims of life unless we choose to be so. Just contemplate those words for a moment. And so it is.
Got a special song for you guys this morning. Well, I'm just an old chunk of coal, but I'm gonna be a diamond someday. I'm gonna grow and grow until I'm so blue, pure and perfect. Gonna put a smile on everybody's face. Well, I'm gonna kneel and pray day. At least I should become vain along the way. Well, I'm just an old chunk of coal now, Lord, but I'm gonna be a diamond someday. Well, I'm gonna learn the best way to walk. I'm gonna search and find a better way to talk. I'm gonna spit and polish my old rough-edged self till I get rid of every single flaw. Well, I'm gonna be the world's best friend. Gonna go around shaking everybody's hand. Well, I'm just an old chunk of coal, I know, but I'm gonna be a diamond someday. Well, I'm just an old chunk of coal now, Lord, but I'm gonna be a diamond someday.
I see your diamond shining. What a perfect talk for the message I'm about to give. Good morning, everyone. Look at how beautiful you all look today. It's so wonderful to be here with you. And good morning, everyone online. Hi, it's so good to see you. And to know that we are, did I mention we had a day a few weeks back where we had 4.7K viewers? Is that amazing? We did a little boost, and we had boosted many times before, but we never had 4.7K viewers, and we cannot figure out why. So if you'll go back and review February 21st, I believe it was, and tell me what was so special about that day, let me know so I can do that again. So it's wonderful to be here, and there's a spirit of blessed, inspired, and grateful in the house. It feels like every Sunday for me, it feels like we're getting restored a little bit more to some familiar, normal way of showing up and being together. And I noticed even in the way that people came in today, there's just something sweet in the energy of everybody being here. Hi, you guys. So the title of my message has had me excited all week. I've been a little Twitter-pated beyond springtime. And the title of the message is The Joy of Becoming. So imagine you're the minister and what was that word you used? You cultivate it all week long. You're cultivating a certain idea. You're working with a couple of quotations. So all week long, I've been thinking about what a joy it is in this process of becoming just in my own life. And for me, that was the part of the song I liked, Rod. It was that I'm just a piece of coal right now, but man, I'm becoming a diamond, and I know it, and I own it and claim it, and I'm being it. And what tickled me was that there's joy in the becoming. That's all I could think of while you were singing. It was so fitting for what I want to say today. So let me share with you the quotation that excited me and fueled me and gave me direction in creating the message. It comes from everybody's little favorite Ernest Holmes book, This Thing Called You. And in that book, Ernest Holmes said these words: you, take it really personal now, act like he's talking to you. You are a spontaneous, self-choosing center in life. You are a spontaneous, self-choosing center in life in that great drama of being. Boy, I love that line because I like living that passionate in the way that somebody was it in your reading or in his song? I don't know. There's something in that story of life that is ours to live. So you are that spontaneous, self-choosing center in life in the great drama of being, because our life is about beingness, and the great joy of becoming. And then I love this hitch at the end, because it is the certainty of eternal expansion. it is certain that we are going to always be becoming, whether we are actively participating in that or not. And when we choose to get involved in it, when we are intentional in the way that we want to become, the way that we want to keep growing in our own personal life, then everything changes. So there's a thread of that idea of becomingness that is inherent in just who we are. And so when I think of that, it makes me think about the way we go to sleep at night, we wake up in the morning, and it's like every day is a new day. Every day it's a clean slate, as long as you don't carry from yesterday into today what you don't really want to have in today. And so I love that idea because it gives us that pure potential. It gives us that vastness of living in pure potentiality. And it reminds me that today is not just about picking up where I left off yesterday, right? There might be things I need to complete today that I didn't get done yesterday, but today is a brand new, fresh, unplanned, unscheduled in all kinds of divine ways as I allow myself to be open to receive. That it is my privilege to receive the good that I require. And as Emma would say, Emma Curtis Hopkins would say, as much as I want my good wants me. So we want to be open to unexpected possibilities in our life, and that's a good reason to move through our life in that great idea of joy. And I love that line where he said, you are a self-choosing center in life. First of all, you are the center of your own life. You know, whether we desire to be that or not, we always see things from our perspective. And it's just a good invitation to choose joy. So don't settle for yesterday's leftovers. I don't mind leftovers. I like to eat leftovers for breakfast sometimes. But I notice my husband will do anything to get out of leftovers. So, you know, that's kind of the attitude I'm leaning into, that every day can be fresh and new and can expand, and we can grow, and we can learn and add to what we knew yesterday, add to the joyous experiences we had, and recognize that in every moment there's this great potential for joy. It's inborn, it's natural, and it's a waste if we don't use it. Except that tomorrow, we'll get a clean slate and start over again. Meister Eckhart, 13th century mystic, comes from the Catholic Church. Meister Eckhart said so many hundreds of years ago, he summed it up beautifully. Be willing to be a beginner every single morning. Be willing to be a beginner every single morning. And with that idea, then that takes me into that Eastern idea of beginner's mind. Have you heard that term before? How wonderful it is to practice having a beginner's mind. And I think a beginner's mind is useful because when you're a beginner, you don't know what you don't know. So life doesn't look as hard as it can be. It can get more complex when you start learning and you start experiencing things and you start defending yourself so bad things don't happen like they did last Tuesday or when you were 10 years old or something. So there's something sweet in that idea. And I wanted to tell you a personal story this morning about a time in my life where I really understood the difference between a little wisdom in life and not knowing, and then returning to a situation and having more information and doing it better the second time around. So when I graduated from high school, I went right into we used to call it junior college, community college. And so the only reason I went to this particular school is because I was dating a guy that was taking auto mechanics at this particular junior college campus. And it was really strange because to get in, that meant I had to take I had to find a class that they didn't offer at the community college I was supposed to go to, because by then in that part of California, and at that time you had to go where you were assigned to go, sort of like public schools. And so I got into the dental assisting program. That was a huge mistake in so many ways, but it got me on the same campus as my beloved boyfriend of the day. And so I studied for 2 years. We broke up, and eventually, almost at the end of those 2 years is when I met Hugh. We became engaged. We got married shortly after I was done with school, and had babies, and my life got complicated, and it was overflowing with joy and fun, and boy, talk about becoming, you know, all of that stuff when you're a young woman. But when I got to like my mid-30s, I wanted to go back to school. I realized my kids were older, they were in junior high, just getting ready to be in high school. Actually, a good time for me to be busy doing other things than living with them, because there were 4 of them and they would gang up on me. And so I had this yearning for school. I wanted to go back to school. Now you're a little smarter. You have life experience. You have a different relationship. So here's what I noticed. When I went to school right after high school, I just did one thing after the other. It was like picking up where you left off yesterday. And there was very little new about it, new people, but it was still the kind of the drudgery. And I did not get good grades. And by the way, I did learn painfully that those grades stay on your permanent record forever. They mess with your GPA forever. And now I want to go back to school. So I'm working full time. But I have a job that allows me, I go in the late morning. I could take 2 classes every morning before I went to work. And then I figured out I could juggle 2 more night classes during the week, and that would give me full-time credits, which I maintained until I got my AA degree, and then I moved on to university. But what that meant was that I was actually a 35-year-old woman in daytime classes with 18-year-old kids. And they did school different than I wanted to do school as a 35-year-old woman. So I learned a lot just from observing the differences. So here's where the story gets good. I took an English class. You have to take English composition. You have to do that to get at that time anyhow, I don't know what it is now, to get your AA degree, to move on to university, at least if you're going, I was in the Cal State system, so you had to have all these requirements. And the morning teacher, the 8 a.m. teacher, was Mr. Jans, and oh, he was a booger. He was difficult, and he was critical, and he was proper. He was always dressed well, and he always called me Mrs. Rice. He never used anybody's first name. And he had a unique way of teaching. The kids hated it. And in fact, I think Mr. Jans loved that he intimidated the kids. And he predicted that in this filled classroom, because it was a required class, so that, it's bulging at the seams, that there would only be 8 or 10 of us left at the end of the semester, and he was right. The kids hated him, he picked on them, it was so funny. But for me, I never felt picked on, because I had been in life, I had been in the world, and I was in school because I wanted to be in school and I wanted to learn. So let me give you an example of one of the teaching mannerisms that Mr. Jans so proudly exhibited. He would, instead of giving us a long list of vocabulary words to memorize and then take a test on, he would just grill us every day. And out of the clear blue, he would pull out a word that you had never heard of, that you're probably never going to use in your entire life, except here's one I'm going to repeat that I learned from Mr. Jans. Mr. Jans says he looks over and he sees a girl sitting over there in the middle of the room, and he says, Miss Jones, you look rather lugubrious this morning. Is there something going on? And now she's horrified. She's 18 years old. She doesn't know what lugubrious means. She doesn't know it. She really wants to interact with him. I mean, you don't even want to make eye contact with him because he'll pick on you. And suddenly, everybody's laughing and she's fidgeting in her seat. She's embarrassed. No teenager wants to look foolish. I mean, we don't really want to look foolish either, but they really don't like it. And so I see some nodding, we remember. And then he looked at me and he said, Mrs. Rice, do you agree? Do you think Miss Jones looks lugubrious? And then I started laughing and I went, I don't know. I don't know what it means. Tell me what it means. I'm here to learn. And then he laughed. He loved that kind of an interaction. He laughed with me. And he said, well, it means she's sad. She looks forlorn. And then we would talk about it. Another time in that class, we had to read a Jack London book. I think it was White Fang. I don't know. I tried to look it up and remember. I totally don't remember. But I remember that I read the book and I sort of liked it. You don't necessarily like everything you have to read. But I remember that it was I could talk about it. And sure enough, that morning, he picked on me first. And he says, Mrs. Rice, could you please give us a synopsis of the homework assignment, the reading of White Fang? And so I went, oh, okay. And so I stumbled through it and said what I remembered. And then he leaned on his little podium and he said, and did you enjoy the reading? And I said, well, I liked it very much. You did? Why? And so I told him why. It was in nature, and I like books about nature, and I liked it was kind of high drama. It was interesting. It kept me on the edge all the time. And he just stood up and he went, wrong. It's wrong. It's all wrong. The book was horrible. Let me tell you why. Now, what I learned later, and then of course I had that nervous laugh, and all the kids were really uncomfortable, I'm sure. But I didn't get offended by that, because then what he did was he went in to give an explanation so that we could begin to understand literary analysis, which is what English composition is all about. That's one of the things they want you to be competent about as you're getting ready to do research later in your the progression of your education. Did you know that, ministerial student? I think that's the whole point. That's why some of them are so fussy. They want us to really get all that. Oh, you were lucky if you missed that class. So this is a really good illustration of how we can grow and expand not only in our knowledge, but I think that experience gave me information because I was able to observe the difference between me and the younger students, but I could also relate to them, because it hadn't been that many years before where I was in their chair and I didn't want to be there either. And so if we can stand in that place of recognizing the choices in our life and also begin to just even the tiniest possibility of seeing the joy of what happens when we're becoming, when we're learning, when we're growing, if we can have joy along the way, then that changes the entire example. It's a beautiful experience of beginner's mind. You'll notice what I'm saying here, I'm suggesting, is that I took my beginner's mind back into the classroom with me. So it's like that, is it T.S. Eliot? You return to that place you once began, but you know it for the first time. And I love the essence of that as a truth. So imagine how things would be different if we were open to that, if we brought that beginner's mind to many of the things that we experience in our lives. A couple weeks ago, I spoke about arguing for your limitations, and I keep thinking about that. Why do we do that? And I think we do it because it's easier. It's easier. It takes time to intend to see something with new eyes or experience something that you've done many times before, but to do it like it's the first time you ever did it. And so there's this gorgeous way, if we could look at, as we're moving through our week this week and we're looking at the way we encounter all the tasks that we have to accomplish this week. Think of a couple things you have to do this week. And if we could do those tasks, approach them with that beginner's mind, wow, I think our lives can be really different. We can really use everything we're talking about right now as our week unfolds. Because they say, I love this, in beginner's mind, there are infinite possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are very few. Right? If you're well studied in a specific thing, you're always looking at a smaller group of options in the way that you move through your life. So we want to notice that sometimes, though we want to be good, and at the end of that song, Rod said something about, I want to be good, I want to do right, or whatever. And yes, those things are true, but we want to not aim to be an expert or to look like we're really good at being good or doing the right thing. We want to not miss the simple beauty of just approaching life in that spontaneity that Holmes was talking about in the opening quote. In Zen Buddhism, they call beginner's mind Shoshin. So if you are practicing Shoshin, you are practicing an attitude of openness and eagerness. In Shoshin, you enter life in a state of consciousness without your preconceived ideas, which is sometimes difficult for us. And I would say it's why the last year or longer has been so tumultuous, because we have so many perceived ideas that we carry around with us all the time. So when we practice being open at the top, we're always inviting new possibilities. I like to say, this is Holmes languaging, we're letting life expand. We're letting life expand. We can then be in that space of encountering that joy in life while we're growing and moving through life in this gorgeous gift of life we each have. We also say that every seeming problem has a spiritual solution. So I encountered a problem this week. I had to learn a new skill. I wasn't very happy about it. It involved plumbing and a tool that I didn't really ever want to have to use, a plunger. Yeah, and so I noticed at the moment of my awareness that there was a pickle that I had to figure out. I noticed that I immediately went into sort of victimhood. I can just call it, I can name it. It was like, oh no, I have to do everything. Oh, I don't know how to do this. And there was some mixture of me wanting to be the martyr or the victim. I'm not sure. I do both really well sometimes. And you don't need to know all of that, but it's true. You too can be human if you know I'm human, hopefully. But there was also some resistance. I could see that, but I don't want to do that. And then the little voice in my head went, honey, nobody wants to do that. So I prayed on it. There's spiritual solution to every problem. So I prayed on it. And the prayer just calmed me down. The prayer, I think, gave me some clarity. And I had this brilliant idea, some of you know where I'm going. It was like, just get on YouTube. Just get on YouTube and see how some people demonstrate how to do this. Maybe you'll learn something and you can do this job with some confidence. And so I got on YouTube. And I didn't just watch one video. I watched 3 videos. And I'm really glad I did, because each video gave me a new skill. Here are some things I learned on YouTube this week. You have to have the right tool. Apparently there's a plunger, and then there's a plunger. I was really glad I learned this. I don't think I would have thought ahead about this. But you want to minimize the messiness of what you're about to do. I was really glad I was prepared for that. I learned about angles and force and the way you use that force. I learned, this was really helpful to learn ahead of time. I learned the physics between air and water. That if you get air in the plunger and you don't get it out in a proper way, you will get it out and it might be all over you. So there's something important in the physics between the relationship of air and water together in that particular job description. And I learned from the last guy I watched, he was an older guy, he was really quite interesting. He said, you want to plunge 12 times. No, nobody else plunged 12 times. I don't know what that was about. But what I learned from that was that, don't give up. Don't get discouraged if the first 2 or 3 forceful plunges don't work. So I went from feeling overwhelmed to feeling really empowered, because guess what? I fixed the problem. It's really useful. I used all the skills that I just mentioned, and it wasn't really that hard. And now now that job doesn't intimidate me anymore. I don't think I'm going to like it ever. But it was like, oh gosh, I just felt so empowered, because there's a process. There are patterns of the way things work. And here's the funny part. As I was looking at all of this, I kept thinking, do you know that Dr. Ernest Holmes says again and again and again that every problem we encounter in life has something to do with the way that we constrict the natural flow of life. And so if I look at that, this is a universal theme. This is something that Mr. Jans was trying to teach us. So he was forcefully nudging us in his own creative idea of teaching students or terrorizing young students, I don't know which. But there's something in that message that tells me that there is a way that life is just like Mr. Jans, nudging us to grow and telling us at the same time that it doesn't have to be horrible, that it can be entertaining, it can be educational, it can be fun, and there is joy in becoming, and if nothing else, there was joy when the task was complete, right? So it's bathroom wisdom 101, I guess. But I love the whole idea of all of that. So the quote that made me think of, I found a quote that helps me put it all together, that helps us understand it. And it comes from Evelyn Underhill. And Evelyn Underhill is a well-respected academic. I'm sure she's not living anymore, but she was in the field of psychology, and she wrote about mysticism. Her most well-known and well-produced book is on is called Practical Mysticism. And Evelyn Underhill said this. I love this quote. This is my takeaway today. We must learn to dip ourselves in the universe and to know it. Not from comprehending it, but know it within from the self-mergence. Now, if you've been listening to me for any time at all, you know that I love that idea of emergence. And I love the way we are called to that self-mergence, that inner wisdom that's in you, that desires to be expressed in your life. It's ours for the taking, and every one of us has it. And we access it according to how much we're able to access or how much we desire to access. So we want to dip ourselves in the universe and know it, right? You don't learn to swim from reading a book. Eventually you have to be immersed in the water and you have to practice the strokes, right? I couldn't fix the flow of water in my home until I immersed myself in enough knowledge so that I had the confidence to do the job that had been called to be mine to do that day. So there's this way that we can find joy there no matter what, because all of it is a part of our becoming. Isn't that a lovely thought to take home today? That every little thing we encounter, that there is a spiritual solution waiting for you. This is my brand new book this week. I've only had it about a week. And this is Thomas Berry. And he also was a Catholic priest. And Thomas Berry is most well known. He's current. He passed in 2009. And he's known as not only a great scholar and a deep spiritual thinker, but he was an environmentalist, and so his writings are so yummy. He writes with such beautiful grace in the way that he, as a spiritual leader, understands nature and the relationship that we have with nature. So he had a passion for the earth, and he brought his spiritual values into the work he did for our environment. It's an invitation for us to sort of see the wholeness, and that's what I want to do right now, is to tie it all together so that we can see the way that all of life connects. Thomas Berry said, we need to think of the planet as a subject that we can understand, and that we can understand it both scientifically and as a myth. Isn't that a great statement? There's a story value in all of life. And so he looks at nature and he sees the magnificence of the way nature sustains herself in this great, powerful way constantly. nature knows how to overcome those obstacles so that the flow of life can continue. And we can use that as a great example, not only scientifically, but in the story that tells us. So listen to the quote. He says, he uses a tree as an example. He says that there's an intelligence in a tree. We're just going to look at one tiny little aspect of nature. That there's an intelligence in the tree that has this vast diversity of activities. And this is how he describes the vast diversities of the life of a tree. He says it starts with a germinating seed. Every time you prayed today, Tracy, I thought of this quote. It starts from a germinating seed, sending out roots down into the soil, raising up its trunk, branching out in all directions, sprouting leaves, and finally scattering seeds for further expansions of its life. Wow, that's a big story right there. That's a great big story. And in that same way, the earth is doing the exact same process. Think about it. Everything in the earth has all those working parts that come together with that very same intelligence that tells a tiny seed to germinate, root, grow a trunk and branches and leaves, and create seeds for the next cycle. And so as we look to understand both the science and the story of the earth and of the universe and of our own beings as we stand in place in this universe, we will begin to see the larger patterns and the interpretations that are there in the story. The pattern of one tells the story of all. It's the same story. It's the exact same story. So there's a repeating story in life, and we're all a part of it, and we're all emulating it in our own individualized and personal way. But we are demonstrating, going back to that quote with Holmes, we are demonstrating the certainty of eternal expansion, that life is always becoming, and that the universe is sacred, and it is always self-emerging, and so are we. So I want to end today with, must have had my rowdy, rebellious hat on when I was writing the talk, because I want to end today with a quote from Thomas Paine, who is certainly a rowdy, rebellious part of the beginning of this country. And Thomas Paine is, they say he scolded George Washington, and we know that he is the primary influencer of the Declaration of Independence. And he, like many of the founding fathers, he was a deist. And what was true for the deists was they were SBNR. You know what SBNR is, don't you? Spiritual but not religious, that's right. Turn it right back there. Spiritual but not religious, that's what they were doing before we had SBNR, shortened ideas. And so Thomas Paine, really, he used scripture all the time. He was deeply spiritual, but he did not like the idea of institutionalized religion, but he said some pretty powerful things. And so I want to end this morning with a quote that it makes me cry, and I've been weepy this morning for good reasons. Thomas Paine said these words: "We have it in our power to begin the world again. We have it in our power to begin the world again. We are living in a rare time in the history of this planet that we are given, those of us here right now on the planet, we are given this powerful opportunity to have lived through a pandemic, to have lived through global change unlike anything we've ever seen or experienced. Not that the planet hasn't always been changing, but we, those of us who are alive now, must have intended to be here because this work is not cut out for everybody, but it is cut out for us. And the fact that we are living and we are alive and we are here on the planet right now proves that that has to be true, that there can be no exception to that. Every problem has a spiritual solution. And so when it feels like the forces of nature are ganging up on you, and there are things in your life that are distasteful or that you would rather not do, or that you don't think you can do, please remember that you're just thinking you're a piece of coal when all along you've had the diamond there trying to shine. That's what I wanted to say today. So, yeah, let's wrap it up with a little prayer. So I invite you just to get comfortable where you're seated. And I won't ask you to think about the things I said today, because you might not like to. But I would say to you that everything spoken this morning addresses possibility. That we can do anything put before us. That whatever we see as we are navigating our path of life, if it appears that there is an obstacle in our way, that there is always a way through or around or over or under, that the divine guidance of all of life is conspiring to bless us. And so I feel that guidance, that divine love right here in this room. It is a bright light that seems to be shining upon us, urging us into this space of growth. And yet what we know is that it is a divine light that sparks from within. And so on this beautiful day, on this glorious day at the end of the month of March, we just open ourselves to recognize that there is a force of love on this planet that is just like that old English composition teacher, nudging us, urging us, inviting us to see that there is another way of perceiving every situation. There is that infinite intelligence of the universe that is urging us to see that we are well equipped to deal with whatever it is that we might consider a challenge or a stretch of the imagination. But more than that, we are invited to see that we are self-choosing individuals, and that we can choose the experience of joy in our becoming. For there is that eternal life principle of expansion that is ever moving, spiraling upward in this grand and mighty way, inviting us into the fullness of our own lives. And so I feel this gratitude within me. I know that it is that way in which we are big for God, and the way that we recognize and appreciate, and we allow Spirit itself to inspire us. And so we are breathing this breath of life. It is the sweet kiss of God that brought us into being, and that reminds us even now, as we are being held so sweetly in the consciousness in this very room, and at the sound of the way that our ears are able to pick up this message from a distance, the way we are held sweetly in the arms of God, a consciousness much like Mother Earth, and the way that she nurtures all of life on this planet. I feel that love of God, and I know it is that very instinct that is calling forward our wholeness. It is that way in which we can realize we are perfect and whole and complete, and that anything that is blocking our awareness of that, anything that is an obstruction in our ability to function physically well and radiantly and vibrantly in our body, that those obstructions are dissipated, that they are dissipated in smithereens, and they extend out to the ethers of the universe, so that we can breathe in again. We can be aware of that kiss of life, the divine lips, the sweetness of the breath, and we are reinvigorated. We are standing in this place of feeling confident that everything we desire to know is revealed, and that it's far more than intellectual knowledge. So we open ourselves to be vessels to receive our good, to experience the becoming of life that is ours to become, and to expect with joyous anticipation that every desire shall be delivered. We therefore call peace on this planet. We therefore call peace in our relationships. We call forward health and vibrancy in our physical way of being, and we call forth abundance for this spiritual community and in our personal lives as well, so that we experience together a consciousness of thriving and of joyfully living the unfoldment of our own lives, and therefore the future of humanity. I say thank you, God. Thank you, life. How grateful I am to know that there is a law in place that always works. It is spiritual principle. There is a solution to every seeming problem. I am grateful to know this truth, and I release the powerful words of this prayer into the law, knowing it is already done, and together we say, and so it is. Amen. Grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. I am so grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. Everywhere I look and every face I see is love reflected, shining back to me. I just give thanks for all these simple things, the joy and peace that gratitude brings. That's why I'm grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. I am so grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have.
Oh, thank you, Bradford. So I am grateful. I have to tell you, so one of the things that I believe, and I've been believing very, very consciously for the last probably year and a half now, is that every experience and every person that comes into our life for one reason, and that is to remind us of our truth, of who we are. And what better place can we go to church and get spiritual principles about a toilet? So thank you, Reverend. So now is the time to celebrate the abundance of our lives.
There is no place where God is not.
Yes. No place. All right, so now is the time to celebrate the abundance of our lives, of our community, and of the world. So let's say our giving affirmation together. I live in a consciousness of good. Divine love blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God. So it is.
Please rise for our last song.
right, remember, you have no reason to feel lugubrious this week. Repeat after me. It feels so good to be alive. Amen, amen. Thanks for being here, everybody. Have a blessed week. Remember, pray often, love much. See you in a week.